Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. As part of our Remarriage Club series, I have here in the studio with me, Nicole Thompson. I'm going to let her introduce herself in just a minute, but this lady has such a beautiful story of divorce and remarriage and just healing, I think was kind of the core of what we talked about when we were prepping for this call. So I'm going to let you dive right in. Nicole, would you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, Shade. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Nicole Thompson. I am a life coach. Specifically, I'm a mindset and confidence coach for singers. What else do you want me to say now?
This is all good. It is all good.
Right?
Yeah. So I guess before we go into your story, you're a mindset coach for singers. What's your background there?
Right. So I am, my background is professional music. So I spent years as a background vocalist for a reggae artist from Jamaica. So I'm from Jamaica. So I sang for a top reggae artist for many years. Before that, I was a background vocalist in gospel music. I released my own solo album back in the day. And I'm also a trained and certified voice teacher. So there was a season before I came to live here in the US that my whole life was professional music, professional songwriting, teaching and training, and also music and worship ministry in the church. And ministry leading. So I've been involved in the music of music. I've been involved in the leadership and business of music. And so on my journey to building a life coaching business, it just became really clear that this is something that I want to do, to work with singers, to step up to the mic, bring themselves to the mic in a way that will help them to have more impactful performances.
I love that. I love that so much. You're my first celebrity on the podcast.
That's hilarious.
So that's the way I'm viewing this. I'm like, listen, I've had celebrities and gospel artists on my
there
podcast.
You go. I love it. I love it. Absolutely.
All right. So let's talk about your remarriage. You have been remarried now 10 years.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Let's kind of talk about the where you are now. Like, what's your life like now? Before we go back to everything that happened, dating, all of that stuff. What's your life like now compared to your first marriage?
I think so. For context, obviously I'm older, but behind that is the maturity. I think now there's a lot more self-awareness on my part, a lot more openness and understanding, and a lot more willingness to do hard things. I think I know for sure I went into my first marriage pretty immature, kind of starry-eyed, but kind of with this mindset that a marriage is going to complete me. Which is a heavy burden to put on another human being.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And while I think we both made mistakes in the marriage, I was able to fully own up to where I did not bring wholeness to the marriage. And so now I'm so much better at seeing where, taking responsibility for what I need to contribute to building the relationship, to being able to take the first step to mend something, even when I think that it's his fault.
Right.
Right. But to still be able to say, you know what, I think it's his fault, but I can step forward and take the first step towards, mending the breach. And I'm so much more myself. I don't think I really knew who I was in my first marriage. And now I came into this marriage having a better sense of who I was. And
Mm-hmm.
now in this marriage, and so many other things going on, becoming a life coach, growing spiritually, and all these other things, I
Mm-hmm.
have such a better grasp of who I am. So
Right.
when you know who you are, you can bring so much more to any relationship, but particularly to a romantic or a married relationship, I think. So
Yeah.
I think that's a big difference. So I'm feeling more comfortable in my skin. It's
Mm-hmm.
easier to disagree because I'm not so much afraid that a disagreement is going to cause a marriage to end, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's just a more, for me, I feel more relaxed. I feel more comfortable. I feel more at home.
Yeah. I love that because I think a lot of my ladies worry about going into a second marriage, and because of all the challenges of the first marriage and the challenges of the
Hmm.
divorce, it's
Hmm.
almost like everything they went through, all of
Hmm.
the survival mode and all of the pain, it's almost like they're so aware of that that they can't see the possibilities in a second marriage. But what you I hear you saying, and what I've experienced, is that it multiplies the fact that you've been through all of that, multiplies the possibilities that your second marriage would be more amazing.
Absolutely, it's absolutely an opportunity that you can take. The blessing for me was that in when my first marriage ended, I have one of my closest friends. She's a therapist, and
Mm-hmm.
when my marriage was ending, the first thing she did was refer me to a therapist. And I think the best thing I ever did was to go
Yeah.
into therapy as my marriage was ending, because it helped me to process the ending of the marriage in the way that you just described. Like
Mm.
it's an opportunity to get to know who you are and to multiply the opportunities for growth and for better relationships down the road. Um,
Let's go to the beginning of the story now, because
yes.
why did your friend? What were you like? What made your friend recommend?
You
We
know,
don't walk
I should
around
ask
recommending to
her.
people.
I know I
A
should ask
therapist.
her. I really should ask her because I think because of who she is, as a trained therapist and counselor, but she, and also my friend, but you don't turn off that professional side of you in your
Mm-hmm.
personal relationships. She must have seen that I was a hot mess.
Tell us about the hot mess. What was that like?
I think, I think, I think I was pretty. I think I didn't know how much I didn't know.
Oh my
You
God,
know, when
so
you
good.
think, you know a lot, because so I grew up as an only child. I um am a born again Christian. I gave my life to the Lord at a very young age, and I had very strong views about Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And I had very strong views about myself as a Christian. So I thought a lot
Mm-hmm.
about myself and I thought a lot about my opinions. I placed myself on a bit of a pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I was also very needy and didn't recognize it. Um, and so I think that combination, my friend must have seen that. I know that um, when we became friends, she had recommended therapy to me before, and she had coached it as, Nix, just get to know who you are. Everybody needs to get to know themselves. She explained to me the Johari window. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I have said to her that the day our friendship ends, I want a certificate because I've learned so much. But I think she saw that neediness and that insecurity. I was beneath all of that, I was a pretty insecure person. Um, and so she had been encouraging me to do therapy. I had tried it once, it didn't work out. So I was a
Mm-hmm.
bit soured on it. But by the time my marriage was ended, I was a little bit broken. And
Mm.
so when she said, Nix, here is someone I highly recommend for you, I was like, yes. I
Yeah.
was a yes. So it was just, I think I think beneath beneath a surface happiness and beneath my spirituality and all of that, there was a neediness, a brokenness, and I was disguising it with this kind of fake certainty about all things.
And I think many of us did. I
Yeah.
was the same way. I became a Christian when I was 13. My family, they were nominal Christians, like they went to church, but there wasn't like a spirituality behind it. I mean, they did, go deeper later in life. But for me, it was like, at 13, I was like, okay, I'm becoming a born again Christian. We are the real Christians.
Right.
was our attitude at that age. And I was like, go by the book, girl. I was like, all right, what's the formula for marriage? I read all the marriage books. They said they gave us the 5-step process.
Right.
Go to church.
Right. Exactly.
Be chaste.
Right.
Be pure, be modest, marry a guy from church, make sure he's a Christian. And I followed the 5 steps and ended up with
And that's
with a marriage that was not Christian, because the other person, even though he checked all the Christian boxes, was not a true Christian at heart and was not seeking, but was just as spiritual and certain on the surface.
It's I think it's as you mature that you begin to understand the difference between checking the boxes and character.
Yes.
And learning what you're really looking for, like learning about who you are and understanding that really boils down to more than how you look, what you do, how much money you make, what you say your values are, to who you truly are at heart and who you want to be with, who you want to live with. And character, like not just personality, charisma, introvert versus extrovert, all of that, but really character. What do you stand for? And the things that you say you stand for, are you actually living it out? Are you actually trying to live it out? We're not talking about perfection, but just, what are you growing to become? And our institutions, whether it be church or home or school or whatever, don't prepare us for that stuff. They prepare us to check the boxes.
Yeah. And I didn't even know what a healthy relationship looked like. So my family of origin didn't have a lot of models of healthy relationships. And the church, which was sort of like my second family, and where I got, you could say, my other education in relationships, didn't provide an understanding of what a healthy relationship really looked like, the ingredients of a healthy relationship. Like you said, character, communication, honesty, transparency, empathy, kindness on a one-on-one basis, not when you're feeding the homeless for the cameras, the real kindness, the ability to be in relationship with others long-term. That wasn't taught to me. So I didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like literally. I look back and I'm like, there's no way I wasn't going to end up where I ended up.
I think that's such a powerful point, like modeling. It's so difficult, I think, to let me reverse all of that. We think that relationships are things that you can just do right off the bat. Yes. We don't understand that relationships, like math, need to be learned. And learning in the context of it being modeled for us is so powerful. But for so many of us, marriage and other relationships, like the positive ones, we either don't see them modeled for us, or when we see them, we don't have access to the behind the scenes.
Because,
right?
I mean, the education that like you have gone through with therapy and work and coaching and rebuilding, and probably what I went through in terms of my education to get to where I am, I would say I could get a degree. Like we go and get all these degrees. We get 12 years of education to get a job, plus college, plus graduate degrees, so that we can work 8 hours a day. And we get almost no education in healthy relationships, unless you're lucky enough to see it modeled at home.
Right. Absolutely. It's so funny. I joke with people that at the time that my first marriage ended, I was just about finishing up my initial training in conflict resolution. Wow. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
And I spent a couple of years training teachers to in conflict resolution techniques, incorporating that in the classroom management. I'm like, where was that in my marriage counseling?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I've been to a counselor who every 10 minutes in the session, she'd be like, so agree to disagree. I'm like, Listen, lady, you do not understand what is happening here. Agree to disagree is
Ah,
not going to cut it.
no, we need to talk more. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh. Okay. So after your divorce, were you interested in getting married again? Were you reluctant to get married again? What was your thought process about doing this a second time?
I was interested in getting married again, but I was scared. Um, and in church, it's pretty controversial about
Mm-hmm.
divorce and remarriage. So there was that as well. And um, so I always knew I wanted to be married,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew I didn't want to be single, but I also had to explore that. So I guess I wanted to be married again, but I didn't want to rush.
Mm.
I didn't want to just rush headlong into another mistake, whether it was um, I wanted to take time to make sure that I really wanted to get married again,
Yeah.
that I would be better equipped to
Mm-hmm.
hold out my end of the bargain, like to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I didn't want to get married again on the rebound, right? It's
Yeah.
so easy to try to fix a mistake um, by making another one.
So true. It does
And
happen.
so
Um,
yeah, it was.
were
I
you
I knew I.
afraid of like the dating pool? Like there are no good guys. Did you have thoughts about there are no good
Oh
guys out
yeah.
there? Will I ever find a good guy? Will I marry someone like my ex again?
Y- Um, I figured that I don't know if I was thinking along those terms. I think I was more thinking of, am I marriage material?
Hmm.
Um, can I make a good decision? Can I be a whole person in a relationship? It was I was very much centered on, would I be good in a relationship again? Would I learn
Yeah.
to, would I be able to trust myself, to trust the other person, to grow in a relationship? Can I be me in a relationship? I
Mm-hmm.
think those were really more my questions.
How did you
I
resolve them? Like,
That's a
how
great
did
question.
what was your
Um,
process to get to?
Therapy.
Yeah.
therapy was Therapy was one part of it. I also I have a core of good friends, good girlfriends, like
Mhm.
amazing friends, people who help to hold me accountable. And I think staying
Mm.
in those friendships and being very open in those friendships was really good ground for me to be relearning honesty and open communication, right? It's not the same
Yeah.
as a romantic relationship, but it's the same as a romantic relationship. If in terms of
Mm-hmm.
it's the same things, right? Resolving conflicts, being who you are, having somebody give you feedback about how you did something or you said something and how they received it versus how you intended it, and being able to hear that feedback and
Mm.
and to take it and to learn. I think some of those things that I wanted to learn, I learned in the context of friendships. And um
Were these new friendships after your divorce or old
no,
friendships?
old friendships.
Yeah. So
Old
it sounds like you
friendships.
had people that stuck with you through the divorce and
Yes. Oh,
after.
absolutely. I literally, as my marriage was ending, I literally had a group of people that I could call. I could
Wow.
say, hey, this is happening. I'm going to need some support. I may not be good at taking the support, but
Yeah.
if you need to hit me over the head with a heavy pot,
Yeah.
I will, like, I had those people who were there for me. And I was able to say to them, even if you see me doing crazy things, just I'm open to your correction. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I was at.
How
And
did you know they were safe
my
to
friends,
open, yes, to open your heart to in that way?
we've been friends for so long. We'd been friends
Right.
for so long, and those friendships had gotten so deep so quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
it's always a risk, right? People always make mistakes. I remember there was one friend of mine, we're close to this day, but I remember that when we had a little bit of a riff, when I think she thought that I should be disclosing more, and I thought that I should disclose at the rates that I wanted to disclose. And,
Mm,
there was a little bit of tension, but
yeah.
then we were able to talk it out and forgive each other. Right. So I
Wow.
think, I knew I was safe because, you know what? I knew I was safe because we had a track record of working through difficulties.
So good. I love that. Friendships come up a lot in my coaching. Different women have different experiences.
Yes.
Some end up having friends that just kind of drop them like a hot potato.
Yes.
Some have
Yes.
friends who start dating their husbands as the
Oh,
divorce is happening.
that's a little bit of a problem.
Yes. I mean, some have friends who judge them, but some do have friends
Yes.
like you who are supportive.
Yeah.
And the book that I tend to recommend for people to evaluate their friendships during a divorce and even after is Safe People by
Oh.
Henry Cloud and
Hi. Yes.
Dr.
Yes.
Townsend. Yeah. And
Yes.
I recommend it a lot because that's another understanding that we didn't have.
Yeah.
Like I didn't
Right.
have that going into my marriage. What does a safe person look like? So after my divorce, my ex wasn't a safe person. And I found out that I had friends who weren't safe. Like they weren't like, dangerous per se. It wasn't like I was physically in danger, but in terms of emotionally safe,
Right.
not
Right.
every friend was emotionally safe. So I found out
Right.
that with coaching so many women who are divorced or divorcing, I found out that an understanding of what a safe person looks like or what a safe person feels like is actually required. It's one of those, another thing that's
Yeah.
missing.
Absolutely. I think, and that just shows you how difficult situations really help to clarify who your community really is.
Yeah.
And helps you to decide, what do I want my relationships to look like?
Mm.
Because your marriage and your romantic relationships cannot fulfill all of that, right?
Mm.
It can't like all our relationships were meant to fulfill certain things: your family, your friends, your spouse, your close friends, your not so close friends. They all fulfill different roles, right? And your marriage was never intended to fulfill all of that. I don't
100%.
I
There's
don't
no
think.
one person can reflect back to you all the facets of your
Exactly.
life and what you want out of life.
Exactly. So when you're going through these difficult times, and when you find, the people who judge you, or the people who drop you like a hot potato, as you said, um, like the real friends will recognize what they're doing to harm you. Maybe you have a talk, and if they, the ones who are true will recognize, and there will be healing, and the ones who aren't true will stay dropped, and that's awesome, because you really
100%.
don't need that energy in your circle.
Yeah. I
But
want to go back.
I was blessed with good friends. So
Yeah. I want to go back to what you said about just the thinking through getting remarried as a Christian, where there's
yes.
like, there's like I said, a lot of controversy in the church about kind of person who's
Yes.
divorced ever get married again. How did
Yes.
you work through that? Like, what was and I know, of course, your conclusion is for you and you had to work
Yes.
through this with God yourself. So we're not establishing
Yes.
theology here.
Right. No,
But
absolutely
I want
not.
to hear your journey.
Oh gosh, I had lots and lots of conversations, and with my pastor, my friends who were more studied in the Bible than I had read through a lot of scripture, the obvious scriptures where it says, do not divorce. The other scriptures, more obscure scriptures from the old, especially the Old Testament, that talk about different aspects of what really makes a marriage and what doesn't make a marriage. And I think I came to a place of knowing that I was going to make a decision that not everybody would be happy with. Quick context: I was already a relatively public person because of my work in gospel music in Jamaica. So I knew my life was a little bit open, So I knew I was going to end up making decisions that people would frown on. And but at the end of the day, I decided to go with my understanding of what God says makes a marriage, what I believe God says makes a divorce, and whether I wanted to be happy. And I thought that I could be happy as a single person, but I also want to get married, and I believed that God would bless it. And I just decided that I would be at peace with that decision. yeah, it was not a theologically calculated decision, but I did spend a lot of time going through scripture in prayer and in difficult conversations to just kind of decide, you know what, I think God wants me to be happy.
Yeah.
And however I find it, whether single or remarried, I will put it to the Lord at that time and see what happens.
Yeah, and we see what happened.
We see what happened. Absolutely.
So let's talk about how you met your husband. We want to hear the love story.
Okay. So I'm on Facebook one day and I get a friend request from this gentleman. Now, it turns out I had known him from a distance. He had lived in Jamaica for some time. He's American now, but so, I'm saying this all wrong. I knew him from the gospel music industry in Jamaica,
Okay.
but distantly. We moved in sort of circles that touched but didn't know each other very well directly. So he sent me a friend request and it took me about 3 weeks, I think. I was just like, why is he sending me a friend request? But it turns out that he just saw me. He knew who I was. He hadn't seen me in years because he'd been living in the States. And he just wanted to know what was happening because I was probably like, I would have been a close link to him to what is happening in the gospel music industry. So I finally accepted his friend request and we started talking back and forth. And that's literally how it began. The more we talked was the more we talked.
Yeah.
And we became friends, and then we became better friends, and the friendship just blossomed into a romantic relationship.
Wow. How did you know he was the one?
I didn't.
At some point you decided he was.
Like it's so funny because when I was younger, I believed in the one.
The
I
one,
believed
right.
that God had set me apart for this one specific person, and God had set aside that specific person for me. And, God would orchestrate us meeting and that, it was the one.
That was the fairy tale.
The fairy tale
movie
I wasn't
version.
I wasn't sure anymore that I believed in the one. But I think what made me decide that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him, we were such amazing friends. And we never wanted, like, the more time we spent together was the more time we wanted to spend together,
Yeah.
And I was living in Jamaica at the time and he was living in the States, obviously. So it was a long distance relationship.
Wow.
And I think we must have clocked some kind of record hours between BlackBerry. Do you remember the BlackBerry?
I remember the BlackBerry. That's where that age. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. The BlackBerry pin, and then Magic Jack, which is a long internet-based VoIP calling service.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was able to do long distance calls really cheaply from Jamaica. So with that and Skype, and we must have clocked some crazy hour. We were talking all the time.
Yeah.
And the more time, and when we visited each other, we still weren't tired of each other. So that was like, oh, so let's just get married and just spend 24 hours together. 24/7, right? But also we had similar values, which was important to me. He's a Christian. We had similar values. We both loved music. We had a lot in common. We had very similar personalities, but where our personalities differed, it was okay. We could talk through things. We were both pretty open, and we have different conflict styles, but we could still talk through things. I think so. It wasn't even like he is the one, but it was like I was willing to be committed to loving him and to spending the rest of my life learning to love him even more and building a committed relationship with him. I was willing for him to be that one.
Yeah. Oh, I love the way you said that. I was willing for him to be the one. Like it wasn't like a one with a voice from heaven. Because sometimes I've talked to women and sometimes it's like, okay, well, there's this sign and then this sign, and this is a sign and that is a sign.
Yeah.
Which sometimes there are signs and sometimes you decide.
Yeah, I wanted to be yeah, it's the sign thing wasn't working for me anymore.
Right?
Right? Because then if you want the writing on the wall, then you have to figure out, is it God writing it on the wall?
Oh, is it a
Right? So you still,
demon?
right, you still have to make a decision. You still,
Yeah.
even if you think it's a sign, you still have to decide that it's a sign. So at some point I decided, you know what, it has to be a decision for me. I have to choose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I made a choice that it was my choice that he was the one, right? And
Mhm.
thankfully he thought the same thing.
Yes. What's interesting, like who thought it first? Did you think it first? Did he think it first? How did you guys get to that conversation?
Wow. We may have thought it simultaneously, I think.
Hmm.
We were just, you know what? So when we transitioned our relationship from just friendship into, you know what, we want to take this further. Like, we're both older people. I was in my early 40s and he's 8 years older than I. So it's like, we're not just gonna date. We're not gonna waste time, right?
Hmm.
If we're going to get involved in a romantic relationship, it's because we're interested in marriage. So this time of dating, we're looking at each other as a long-term partner. So
Hmm.
I think it's like, look, we're both grown.
Yeah.
This is what we're working towards.
Yeah. So you really went into it knowing that you were going to be building towards
Yes, yes, yes,
a marriage.
yes,
Were
yes.
there things that you, because like in my program, once women decide, okay, this is the guy, I'm kind of moving forward with this one person after they've been
Mm-hmm,
dating, for a while, I teach them to go through milestones. I'm like, okay, he's the one. So for now, like
mm-hmm,
you're going exclusive with this person, but now you have to work through certain milestones to be sure that you can make this into a lifetime commitment.
mm-hmm.
Did you have like things like that you worked on,
No.
conversations that you had?
I didn't have milestones, and I should have had someone like you in my life before, because you're probably going through those milestones now. But I was looking for the ability to be myself.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know that, I was looking to know that I would feel comfortable being myself, expressing my opinions.
Mm.
Um, I wanted to be able for us to disagree, to have an argument, and still know that the relationship was safe, right?
Yes.
And there was a season where we would be like knocking heads, at loggerheads, and then we'd stop and say, we used to make it a practice to say, hang on, is this an argument? Okay, let's, are we arguing? Let's decide. And then, okay, yes, we are arguing. Okay. And become a lot more intentional instead of having it become emotional, where you say things that you don't
Yes.
mean. So that was
Yeah,
helpful.
we've had to do that too. In fact, we dated for about 18 months before we
Mhm.
got married. And there was a period where we were like, yeah, this isn't going to work because we got emotional about things, not
Yeah,
frequently. What was
right,
interesting is that we don't argue hardly at all. But when we
right.
do, we're both very smart. We're both very intellectual.
Ah, got
And we're
you.
both very
Yes,
certain. That's
yes.
the one thing. And
That's
so
funny.
while we were dating about 9 months in, we had an argument. And I was like, okay, we don't have the skills to argue
Mm,
successfully. Not because as
mhm.
individuals we weren't good, but together, whenever there was
Yes.
something on the ground that was serious, we didn't have the skills. And so we just went out and got the skills, which is
Ah,
a
yeah, that's so
milestone,
smart.
right?
Right,
Like with my clients, I
right.
call it the rupture repair cycle. I'm like, you're going to have ruptures and repairs. It's just inevitable in
Yes,
every relationship, but how quickly can you repair? And do you have the tools and the skills to repair? And you want to get those before you get married.
yes,
So we
yes, you do.
experienced that. We experienced that as well, where it was like, oh, okay, we're in love, but like we need to work.
I think it was such a shock for us that, and I don't even remember what our first argument was about, But I just remember it was a shock for us because we're so alike, right? We finish each other's sentences.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, so much more now living together for 10 years, but even then we would finish each other's sentences. So it was such a shock to disagree about something that
Yeah.
I think we were relieved when we worked it out. It was like,
Whew,
okay,
we
so
can go back to no. I
it can
know.
actually
I
work.
totally resonate with that.
But that was important to me. And it was important to me that he respected me and that I could respect him.
Yeah.
Um, and that respect would be reflected in how we talk to each other and even how we argued, or like how we address each other.
Mm-hmm.
And
Do you guys have nicknames for each other?
darling. That's it.
Curious.
Yeah, we call each other darling. I don't think we have names. I think we we have names when it's like, his name is Constantine, or call him Junior if it's a serious thing, right? Or if it's a serious thing, he will, or if we're in front of people who say Nicole, and I'll say Junior. But otherwise, it's always darling.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I think the important thing for me was how can we navigate difficult conversations. That was
Yeah.
very important to me.
Yeah. And I think
Um,
the ability to have that will get you through all the other milestones,
this is true. That
right?
totally
Because
makes
all the
sense. Yeah.
milestones are okay, how are we going to deal with money? Where are we going to live? And
Yeah.
how are we going to divide the chores and all of those things? It's just the core skill you need for all of those is having difficult
Communication.
conversations, communication.
Yes. 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 Being
100%.
able to hear each other, being able to navigate through defensiveness. And because as much as you learn to do that in your other relationships, romantic relationships are always different. It's
Yes.
you're you're
Yes.
you're a lot
So
more
true.
vulnerable. You're a lot more, it's just different. That it just
Yeah.
feels like there's a lot more at stake.
Yeah. So you said your divorce was somewhat public, or at least a lot of people got to know about it in your
Mhm,
community. How
mhm.
did you handle just being observed so
Yeah.
closely during such a hard time?
Yeah, that was challenging for me. I'm an introvert, and um my ex-husband and I were both involved in the gospel music industry. So um people would know. And I think it was so important for me to have that circle of friends. I
Yeah.
had people who had my back. Like I had people who literally fought for me, right?
Yeah.
Somebody would say something untoward or demeaning to
Mm.
me or of me, and before I could even think of a response, there is my
Mm.
guardian angel kind of jumping in front of me and like, how dare you, or whatever.
I
But
love it.
yeah, my community of friends, let me tell you, every woman needs to have that circle of close friends who will have her back and
Yeah.
tell her the truth in love. And I had that. That is what helped me to navigate. It it was challenging. It was
Mm-hmm.
challenging. But I had people I could fall back on.
Yeah.
And that made it, I had my safe place.
Yeah.
And so the people who were unsafe didn't need to factor as much because they were not my safe place.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's so good. You actually
Yeah.
you had a clear difference between who was safe and who wasn't safe.
Yes. Yes.
And of course, like we said, not everyone has the blessing of having that ahead of time like you did. But for anyone listening, if you are going through that or that has happened and you
Yeah.
didn't know who was safe and unsafe early, you can do that work now and just say, okay,
Yes.
figure it out. Who is safe? I didn't have that, but what I did during my divorce over the period of like several months,
Mhm.
I would make a list of, because I would be going through the divorce, court was happening, my ex was doing what he was doing. He was telling all the people in our lives what he was telling them. And so
Mhm.
people would reach out to me and like
Mm.
with all kinds of things. Sometimes it was something good and they were going to, try to help. And sometimes they were just coming at me.
Mhm.
And so I was in a constant state of anxiety and hypervigilance because I
Mhm.
didn't know where
Yes.
the next attack was going to come from. And so I
Mm.
created this process for myself. I think I was a life coach before I became a life coach,
Ah,
just to save myself.
yes.
I
Right.
would write down everyone I talked to during the week, whether it was at church, someone who called me, someone who texted me, someone that I texted, and I would evaluate how I felt and what happened in that conversation. And I would make a decision about whether that person was going to stay in my life, whether I was going to move them out, or whether I didn't know. And I just, every Sunday night, I did that over and over again until I had created an environment around myself where it's like, I tell people, I really don't have any toxic people in my life. Like,
Amen.
Not a one.
We don't have the time for
Right.
Although it's interacting with toxic people that teaches you what toxic looks like for you, 100%. Right? But that's such a powerful mechanism. Like, we do need to be intentional about building community, and I think I'm going to borrow that method.
And another thing I discovered was that I had been neglecting my safe people for probably the 10 years prior to my divorce. And a lot of this was my own issues, my own abandonment issues, my own lack of self-love, etc. My brain always focused on the more toxic people versus the safe people. So when the divorce happened, I was going after the toxic people for help, and they were just like, wham, wham, wham. And over here in this corner were like all these safe people in my life. And when I finally started cultivating those relationships, I realized they'd been there for me all along, and I hadn't paid attention.
And I think as women, we may or may not be encouraged to build these relationships, right? There is this thing of women aren't good friends to women and all of that crazy stuff. But you're so right. There's always that one person who has your back, and you just need to find them. There's always one person, always.
Yeah, that's true. I believe that. I believe like God puts those people in our lives, and we may just not be paying attention to the right people.
Especially when you're in a marriage too. Sometimes, if you're not careful, you can neglect your friendships and give all your energy to the marriage.
Right. And that often happens not just because we're being neglectful, but because there are some spouses who will strategically isolate you from people in your life.
There's so many reasons that could. Yes, you're so right. Yes.
Yeah. So it's actually a good thing to audit your relationship. Like, am I in contact? Am I in touch with people who love me, care for me, understand me, see me? Do I have those people, whether you're married or not?
I love that. I'm writing it down. So that's the second lesson I'm taking from you today.
Right. And I think that's just part of being an adult. And caring for our own wants and needs is to cultivate healthy relationships. It might take some time. It takes a little bit of effort.
It does, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
So worth it. All right, Nicole, I want to just ask you my final question, which is, what's next for you and your husband? Like, what are you guys looking forward to? What's new and exciting that's coming up? What are you dreaming of?
Well, I'm building a life coaching business, so that's exciting for me. My husband is about to embark on some studies for something that he's wanted to do for a long time. So it's looking like some mutual sleepless nights.
Right.
But I'm excited about the fact that we're both going after our dream right now, our dreams. And so I'm looking forward to like just heightened support of each other. COVID, I shouldn't say COVID has ended. COVID is a little bit crazy right now, but we're hoping to travel again together. We like to visit Jamaica together, or to just see other parts of the US together. So just building more memories together. I love that. We spent most of these 10 years just working on our jobs. We both worked for church at one point. So we're just doing the things. Now we are more conscious about having fun together. So
that's so good. And I see you smiling. The listeners won't be able to see how much you're smiling like a little girl right now. But I can tell that like you guys are having an amazing time.
Yeah, you know what? I love to travel. I got a chance to travel a lot as a professional vocalist, and it turns out that he loves to travel too. So, and he's a great travel partner. So I always like whether it's a road trip or if we're flying somewhere together, I love that. So I'm looking forward to more opportunities for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. could you tell the listeners where they can find you, sort of spell out your social media handles on your website? And I'm also going to link them all up, but for people who want it right away.
Right, sure. So social media is where you'll find me. I'm very active these days on Instagram. So you're looking for, I'm going to say it the way it's spelled. You're looking for I am Nicole Thompson. NicoleThompson. So that's my handle, both on Instagram and Facebook. Yeah, that's where you're going to find me. I'm having a lot of fun on Instagram, by the way. So you want to follow me there.
Yeah. And you teach mindset to
Yes.
singers.
So I'm working with singers to bring more than just vocal technique to the mic, to learn how to really step into their own confidence. A lot of singers, no matter how confident we seem to be on the stage, we judge ourselves very harshly. We, like off stage, we are our harshest critics, and it gets in the way of our performances. And so my job, which I've accepted, my mission is to just help singers learn to know themselves, love themselves, really get connected with who they are, build real confidence and not the fake stuff that we're taught sometimes, and really learn how to show up as 100% ourselves at the mic so that we really connect with our audiences and have performances with deep impact.
Wow, that's amazing. All right, everyone. Whether you're a singer or not, you are going to want to follow Nicole because her spirit is just so sweet. I feel so blessed having this conversation with you. I have just really enjoyed, I've just really enjoyed talking to you and learning about your journey. And you've just shared, I believe the remarriage journey is a lot more subtle. Like it's not the fairy tale. We do have fireworks, no joke, but it's about the subtle clues, the subtle love that really is the foundation of true love that really lasts a lifetime. And you actually have that. And sort of like I sense that groundedness and centeredness with you, the way you talk about your relationship. So I just want to appreciate you so much for sharing your wisdom and your journey with me and with my listeners. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I totally enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you for your time and attention, and we will see you next time.